I'm one of those crazy people who thinks that they're smashing particles at the speed of light beneath Geneva and creating microscopic black holes that then perhaps fall to the center of Earth and might form a larger black hole to swallow Earth. Just a theory. It's not just me. There were scientists that also believed that back when they started doing that in 2008, I believe, and sued CERN for that. But knowing that things like that are happening makes me feel okay to then think maybe weather modification is real. Or perhaps that the government is creating wormholes and sending things through them. If you've listened to the show before or read any of the Inverted World books, you know that I've talked to people from mystery schools who've seen beasts, perhaps, so they say, come through portals. Anything's possible. This is Inverted World Live. Welcome to Inverted World Live. I'm your host, Shane Cashman, and if you're watching, yes, I am a floating head in a dark room. I didn't know my sweater was going to be as dark as the wall. So for those listening, you are listening to a floating head. I'm a disembodied voice just in the void. Very existential episode today, but that makes sense for an episode where we're going to talk about secret technology that may be sending planes and other things into wormholes. I'm joined by Alex.
What's up, Shane?
What's up?
I, too, am a floating head.
We did not coordinate.
Sometimes we do.
But sometimes we do, yeah.
Yeah, we're just on the same wavelength, I suppose.
In this dark room. Someone said we're like recording in a dark closet. I'm like, it's actually a coffin.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
Or today, it's a wormhole.
Which is like kind of a great fear of mine, but it's all good.
Yeah, but it's all good. We're here to help work you through that. This is therapy.
Yeah.
Wormhole therapy. Shout out to everyone tuning in. Shout out to everyone who's been listening to the episodes. We really appreciate it. If you want to share your stories, you can hit me up at shanecashman@scnr.com. Send me your stories. We'll bring you on. We have some callers today we're going to talk to. But first, we are going to bring on Ashton Forbes, someone I talked to a long time ago about some really interesting technology, and we're going to follow up today. Let's bring him on. Ashton, how are you, sir?
Hey, Shane. Hey, Alex. How you guys doing?
Good, good. While we were putting the thumbnail together and I was thinking about wormholes, I was wondering what you think Wikipedia is going to put at the bottom of this video today. Are they going to talk about wormholes? Are they going to talk about the Malaysian flight? Where do you think they're going to go? They only have one link.
They don't really spend time yet with the fact checks on wormholes, although it's coming for sure. Like the narrative is moving too much. It's getting too mainstream, so they've got to add a new fact check.
Nice.
Wormholes aren't believed to be possible based on conventional physics, but they will add the MH370 is a plane that disappeared in 2014, and anything that anybody else says about it other than it crashing into the ocean is conspiracy theory.
Oh, man. Well, I really hope today is the first wormhole Wikipedia link. I'd be stoked. So I usually don't like those links, but I'd be pretty like, that's a reward. I would be very happy. So I want to get into all that Malaysian stuff because you and I talked about this before on the Culture War about a year ago now, which is hard to believe. I was back in January. And a lot's happened since then, and you've been talking about it a lot and a lot of other things. But just before we went live, I saw you were tweeting out something that Mario Narfal, I always forgot to say his last name, was saying about a military contractor faking satellite data. That's interesting, and it will segue into what you talk about with MH370. But what are the implications of that? What does that even mean?
Yeah, I think the main implication is nobody knows how to say Mario's last name.
Thank you.
Certainly not me as well. Narwhal?
Narwhal.
Like
that's what it is.
narwhal,
Yeah.
like the fairy tale unicorn dolphin thing.
That's right. All those things. I accept them all.
Yeah, but so I looked into that just briefly at a glance, and it looks like Lockheed Martin was basically faking some of their satellite data to make it seem like Starlink was interfering with their satellites when they actually weren't. Now, this just became relevant because in the MH370 case, there's only one strong piece of evidence that indicates the plane even went to the South Indian Ocean. Just one. There's no witnesses. There's just satellite pings to this company's satellite called Inmarsat. And their VP said that the data was good, assuming that it had not been manipulated or spoofed in any way. And you're like, why are you saying that? Like, this was something right after the data was released, and they waited weeks and weeks and weeks to release the data. And I just went actually as well and looked at some of Victor Ilanello's blogs. He doesn't really like me, but I think he did a good job reporting what was happening historically throughout the case.
Okay.
And in 2018, they looked at the final report of the plane that disappeared, and they found that the message logs don't match what was released previously.
Ooh.
There was a message attempt to the plane from the ground that started at 1802 UTC to 1843 UTC. This is important because this is right after the plane flew over Penang.
Right.
So if this was an emergency event, they couldn't land at Penang. The fact that they were the people were trying to reach the plane is really important. And 1843 is when I've identified that those videos are happening of the plane getting zapped through a wormhole in the Nicobar Islands. Right. So the fact that there was this, like the logs were being manipulated, I think that in order to manipulate the Inmarsat satellite pings, it would have been trivial. Like just a matter of just like changing one number in a column on an Excel spreadsheet. Right. And now the plane's in a completely different direction, different location.
That's what's scary to me, because in preparing for the first time we talked, I went on that tangent about Lockheed Martin spy satellites. And you were talking at the time a lot about the global mapping that they do, global infrared mapping. And it basically becomes like a false, not a false, well, God is omniscient, but that's a false omniscience, because they're basically becoming omniscient in their ability to just real-time record Earth. But then if they're also able to then just fake stuff too, I mean, how do we know anything's real anymore? That's the problem with me.
Well, that's what they want, right? Is that works to the benefit of the people that are hiding any types of secrets at all. If you can't tell what's real or what's not, then, and that's what we've reached this point of cynicism in society now, where neither side, nobody can ever tell if something's real or not. People that are skeptics or believers, you know, and I think that's why I find a lot of this is so important. So for me, it was like, okay, how do you show this stuff's actually real if you're never going to get consensus from people just looking at content, right? It's like, well, you have to understand what you're seeing.
Right.
For me, it was a matter of, we've got a real world event. Like once you figure out that that's a real plane that's been missing for 10 years in these videos, like, well, we can look into that event and we can find out that everything somehow corroborates these videos. And then the other side of it is we can look at the science. Like we can use the real scientific method, not the COVID scientific method of trust the experts, pray to the altar of the experts, but like actually presenting data and coming up with a hypothesis and seeing if your full story matches that data.
Right.
And that's what we used to do for science. So that's how I try to distinguish stuff between reality and fiction. And frankly, when you're talking about wormholes being possible, the line starts to get pretty blurred. Like you were mentioning CERN and weather modifications. These are real things that you have to like are actually possible if you look into the science, and you've got to then figure out, okay, like, can they actually produce a black hole? Now, good news for you, CERN is not powerful enough to produce a black hole. Hawking radiation, basically, like everything has black body radiation, so you're constantly radiating energy away.
Right.
And so the key is, like, can you make the energy get put into a small enough area to create a black hole faster than it evaporates?
What I saw from interviews from way back then was that they were saying they were worried about microscopic black holes that were not dangerous, but the lawsuit from the physicist against CERN were saying they could amass, and I think in what their quote was, turn the world into a sphere of strangeness. I feel like we're there. We're about to talk about wormholes and the Malaysian flight, which, not that 8 years, I guess, after CERN was turned on, the first, the one in Geneva at least. Anything is possible. And when we first talked, the videos that you were sharing, everyone's got different opinions on them. And I'm like, there's a crazy thing happening here with the science behind all of this. We can debate. I have this whole post-reality problem of skepticism for sure, where I don't know what's real anymore because I know what can be created through AI or not, or people manipulating anything, and people will believe in whatever they want to that confirms their biases towards anything. And that comes with war and all this stuff. But the science is alarming. And like I said, whether it's CERN, whether it's, they've been trying to manipulate hurricanes and storms for decades and decades. And now this, and like I said, these mystery schools where people told me that they'd seen beasts brought through portals. Now you're looking into all this stuff, and I see that you're requesting FOIAs. Where are the FOIAs? Are the FOIAs about the science with the Malaysian stuff? Where are those coming in?
I'm attacking from every angle. So all my FOIAs into the science went to the Department of Energy. I actually talked to a very nice lady who's like the FOIA requester there. And She helped me to figure out, because you have to actually FOIA the specific laboratories in the DOE, like Lawrence Livermore, lab. So you have to know like which ones are doing fusion research, and then like FOIA that one for exotic vacuum objects. And then like how do you even know they use those terms? If not, they can just call it something else, like or self-organizing plasma or what have you. The CIA, I've learned a lot about FOIAs. I've learned that you should be very specific in what you're asking.
Yeah.
Because they want to like broad swath reject your FOIAs.
Yep.
So I think the one I'm most proud of is the one about a fire suppression device that washed up in the Maldives. It's clearly a Boeing 777 fire suppression device. And right off the bat, you can see why people would need to discredit this, because bye-bye like suicidal pilot scenario, like now fire scenario is the number one like concern. And when I FOIA'd that, I got a rejection by the CIA and by the NSA, actually. And the NSA's was to be kept secret in the interest of national defense for, I think, subsection 1.4C or D, but basically covert operations is the explanation. And then the CIA's was that same fire suppression bottle, it's classified in a way that they can't confirm or deny the existence because the records themselves existing is classified. And you're like, okay, because some people might say like, oh, well, but that doesn't mean they actually have anything. But it actually does, because when they don't have any records, and one of the 4 that I just got back like 2 days ago, they specifically said we don't have any records about Regicide Anon, which was this YouTube channel, which I didn't really expect them to, but like you want to attack it from enough angles where like when you piece it together, you're like, okay, clearly they're hiding something here.
Right.
Like a plane disappeared and they're rejecting all these FOIA requests for covert operations in the interest of national defense. Like, guys, it's a civilian airliner. This isn't some military thing. Like, what are they hiding? Right?
When I filed a lot of FOIA requests for like true crime cases, or a mysterious death, and most of the rejections are, and some of them have been involved with military property, and I've had to go through, DC, and that one of them was weird because they turned it down saying they had no records of it ever, which I knew was fake because I saw records that were sent to them in the 70s. But anyway, typically they're turned down because they're ongoing investigations. So it's weird that they reject you, because that could be it. Perhaps you think they're still looking into this, or because it seems like it's dead on our side, like it's done. They gave us their official story, and that's that.
Yeah, and the United States government is not even in charge of it, so there would be no reason for the United States government to have any investigation open at all.
Unless it was their tech
was
involved.
Not in charge of the investigation. Australia was in charge because those nations in Southeast Asia there, like they don't have strong governance. So like Australia ended up being like the Five Eyes representative of they're in charge of this investigation. But that's where those doctored messages came from, is that the final report in 2018 was the final report where they added additional factual information there, and people found this sketchy message. In fact, I kind of want to read this message because it's like, so to me, it's very telling based on the time. And I don't know how I didn't catch this before. So the message says, urgent request, please contact Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control ASAP. They complain they cannot track you on their radar, which means they had to be aware that this plane is going off track, because this is an hour after the plane already went dark.
Oh, wow.
I received a call from Subang Center. Please acknowledge these messages. Regards, M, and then it's somebody's name that got, like, they actually edited the name out as well. So we know that they manipulated it for sure. But this was not in any of the original reporting back in 2014. It didn't get found out about until like 2018.
How did you find this? Like, where was this?
So this was on Victor Ilanello's blog, and like he said, he's one of the independent group experts, let's say, that he actually did a really good job documenting kind of the historical context of this stuff, but never really figured out what happened, So a lot of the good information I get for like little cracks that didn't get widely reported on are usually on like people's blogs that were tracking the situation on the plane. Stuff that like goes on CNN is only like a subset of the witnesses and stuff like that were like, pushed to the forefront.
Right.
So yeah, just to like give people the background, like, man, with respect to this, like me and MH370X and the social media community that dug through this, like, did more work than, like, I can't think of any true crime case ever that has had more like evidence found out about it and dug up to the surface, from things like 2 Iranian passengers that were on stolen passports that were like changed their identity, that were traveling together.
Wait,
like, how
can you tell that story? Like, that's insane. You know, so on the plane, there were 2 Iranian people with these fake passports. And how did we find that out afterwards?
Yeah, and this is the crazy part is after one day, they just say, nope, there's nothing sketchy about it. They were trying to flee to Amsterdam, and you're like, but why were they going to China then? Like that's not the right direction at all. And like we know now that like Iran has been, you know, their major conflict in the Middle East. We were basically shimmying, trying to pretend to go to war with them. They stole one of our RQ-170 like super secret drones. They're now claiming a couple days ago that they've got weapons that are more powerful than nuclear weapons.
That's right.
Which people should take notice of that because nuclear weapons are obsolete now. Like people don't realize that everybody's trying to push nuclear atomic bombs. Like, no, we've got technology that renders that completely like inert. Like you shoot your missile at us and we teleport it back onto you. And now it blows up on you. Or the moment it leaves the silo, we hit it with a directed energy weapon from outer space and it explodes right on top of you.
Yeah.